We really encourage investigating and developing the skills in just inquiry, and particularly along these kind of lines of thinking that we're talking about there. So there is a microphone. If anyone would like to reflect or share, or inquire, if there's anything puzzling, it's good to clarify. But it's also a time to share if there are things that really the talk might have brought up things. Please. Thank you, Chu Ai. Please, forward to you.
Bante, thank you for a very interesting talk. To me, a very sobering one, especially when you touch on, are you ready for death? Especially when I'm ready at this age. So the 5 daily remembrances are actually very good, and if we can really do them daily reflecting on them, I think that will make us pretty ready to face that anytime we can actually just go off, and but I think most times, most people will just not think about that, because they will think that I always have afterwards or tomorrow or next day and so on, but if we are always constantly ready, you really will be very careful about our actions, our speech and so on, and personally I don't want to be caught, and maybe there are certain words that you want to say to loved ones and all that, and you might not really get the chance anymore. You know what I mean? So if you are constantly aware and alert to that, I think that will really be great. So thank you. Yeah, we have chanting sessions among our small little group, like 3 times a week, and the 5 daily reflections are actually one of them. You're not removed from aging and so on and so on. So you're constantly reminded. And I think if we can do the Buddha's meditation, Maranasati, I think that would be really even better. You constantly reflect on death. Yeah, just that.
Sorry, that wasn't the thing. That was just. What kind of things make you particularly, make you stop and do that? Or how do you bring that into your daily activities?
Sorry, say again?
These reflections on I will die, or death is a reality, or how do you, when your daily day, which can be occupied with very small things, and you're talking about the plastic lawn, or that we do this sort of life liberation, there's lots of other things. In amongst all of that, which is very fast-moving life, how do you find yourself able to do that? What are ways that bring it in?
Well, it's always easier said than done, I think one of the very important practice for me, I think for all Buddhists, is to be able to be in the present moment, to always turn inward, look within, But of course, as I said again, it's not easy. You succumb to the triggers around you and so on, But I think if we are able to stay in the present moment as much as possible, turn inward, there's that possibility to be very mindful of one's actions, one's speech and so on, and not to really mindful of not creating new karma, mindful of conditioned minds and not get caught, in the current and so on. So to me, really more or less, that is my practice, and yeah, I mean, I feel at least I'm able to remain, the mind is even, it doesn't go up, go down. So that's it. Yeah. Hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it's great. Like actually, how we actually do it. I mean, it's easy to say and it's easy to listen to, but exactly. Is it looking in the mirror, or is it just when you're walking across your room, or do you actually consciously take time and deliberately do it, or when we're just moving from car to room to car or to shop to how do we or do we make it a thing specifically time of day, or those kind of questions are often on people's minds. Or is it just something that you start hearing more Dharma talks and so on, or more, because people don't tend to bring those things up. They just wait, and then someone dies, and that's the only time that they see, the cemetery or a funeral or a shock event or something, or in the hospital, suddenly you're very aware. And then people, spend a lot of their time just going from objectives and, like buying and shopping and pleasures and sleeping and eating, and not really taking time out like that.
Especially at my age now,
Yeah,
I'm already in my 70s,
Mm,
and then experiencing physical discomfort, pain. So that thought that that could be just around the corner. Your number may be called anytime. Makes one more ready.
in the week, yesterday, the day before yesterday morning, the retreat ended and a lady got in her car, and somehow the rubber mat, I think possibly when she got out to go to the retreat, she'd shaken the mat out, and put it back in, and I think it had gone mixed with the pedals. So she started driving down the hill and it was all mixed up, so she tried to bend under and accidentally went on the accelerator, and she just smashed into the corner. And the car was like half destroyed. Fortunately, the airbag went, and I think she'd put a seatbelt on. This was an elderly lady, it was just shows that.
Yeah.
And I've seen a lot of those crashed cars. I think maybe from the windy road, the buses or something come all around. Like with the diving instructor story, it's just, are you ready? That kind of can happen at any time. And also the aging process, it's so slow we don't even notice it. It's kind of like we don't think we're aging. We look in the mirror, it's kind of the same as it was last week. But over time, like sometimes with these videos, I see a side view. Like, oh no, double chin, and then, old. I'm old already. And I didn't notice it happening. But just the mind plays tricks to stop us seeing it, I think. Yet it's always happening. It's kind of always every day and every moment. It's almost like one of the talks I gave is like we're always dying, rather than it being this kind of like event that's on its way. One of the ways to get through is to see death in every moment, and therefore it stops being like this big solid event thing, and more a way to look at life, that death is always within it. Ajahn Chah had a thing like that, like somebody dropped a glass, and he said, well, it was the way I was looking, it was already broken. It's not like it was like complete and then it's destroyed like life. It's a solid thing and then it suddenly becomes a destroyed thing. No, the destruction is always happening. If you look at the from atoms to everything, it's always in flux. But we don't tend to think like that. Yeah. Anyone else like to share any reflections? Please, there's a mic here. Thank you, Joy. Leela.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I was just wondering why do you name the talk the monk with a perm?
Because of this idea of permanence. I hadn't heard the term perm for ages, and I was reflecting on someone came to England and I fell in love with them because they had curly hair. And when I went and visited them in France, they had straight hair, and I was like, oh, I don't like them. I'm like, where's the curly haired person? I thought it was their natural thing. And they said, oh yeah, I had a perm. So the first time I heard this word perm in a long time, in the old 50s and 60s, they used to talk much more about perms. And I was like, what was it? And what's a perm? It's a permanent. which was ironic because it only lasted 2 months and then it went back to straight. So this idea, and actually there was a joke. I wasn't sure if I would include it because it was so out of date. It was where there's a famous movie called The King and I. The King and I, it has Yul Brynner, and he has hair like this, and so a man went into a barber's and he said, "Can you give me a Tony Curtis?" And the man went, "Wah," and he looked afterwards and he goes, "What's that? You've shaved all my hair off." He goes, "Yeah, Tony." He says, "I asked for a Yul Brynner." He said, "Yeah, I saw it. I saw him 15 times in The King and I." So this was sort of along those lines. It was ironic that if I'd gone in, and I used to really want to have curly hair. I struggled much of my life to have big hair, and I wanted it to go curly, and it wouldn't, just wavy. And this irony of going in and saying, "I want I want a permanent," and a Buddhism impermanence. I just play on the words. A lot of the talks are like that. They're just. I like these sort of paradoxical things. Like monks never have perms because they don't have any hair, so it's a kind of like sound of one hand clapping sort of thing.
Yeah, you talked about the subject of impermanence, but we build, as humans, as normal humans who don't, are not so religious, we are more into permanence.
Yeah.
I mean,
exactly.
everything is permanent. You buy a house, it's permanent for a while at least. You have a kid, you have to look after it for 20 years or so, and then, or whatever it is, we build our lives on permanence, So to remove that is going to be a big challenge. And with permanence, I was believing in permanence a lot because I didn't get married, but I had parents who lived a long time, and I thought they would die in their 90s. Such a silly idea because they had good health. They were in the medical profession, and they didn't show their weaknesses or illnesses. So I thought, okay, I'm going to have this permanent life with them around in the picture. But then they were getting into their 80s, and that's when they started having illness. And I could see them die very slowly. I mean, in a span of, for my dad, it would be like 3-4 years. It's already begun, because he had dementia. And then with my mom, she had a serious lung condition. She was a smoker, but she didn't die of cancer. She had something lung-related. So it was like slow. You can see them die slowly, almost like you try to prepare yourself for it, but there's no preparation. I mean, all the preparation you can do, you cannot deal with your emotions after they've gone, So I think that is something that, it's interesting to look at. Yeah, because we build our lives mostly on permanence.
Yeah. So this is a training which is quite radical. It's deliberately challenging this sort of way that heartbreak and torment and stress is so much associated with life that the Buddha said, well, how do we get beyond this? Because aging is everywhere, sickness is everywhere, death is everywhere. There isn't a household, you can't go to one house and it hasn't been affected by death. How are we going to transcend this? So some of the ways we've seen within this, like the 5 reflections, is deliberately trying to reverse this tendency to just go with the flow. And going with the flow is like, I have a house, I have this floor, it's mine, it belongs to me, and therefore I'm secure. Is to challenge that kind of thing, is to, as much as possible, live in the insecurity and keep reminding yourself of these opposite of those. Actually, is the floor permanent? Is my foot permanent? Are the toenails permanent? Is the dust permanent? Is the light permanent? Everything's impermanent. And try to get more comfortable with that, so that when those shocks and blows come, they don't affect you. But to try to get into a lifestyle, and with people who are supporting that lifestyle, where your mind is opened to go beyond me and mine. I was with my mother in the hospital, my father was there, and an Indian lady, this is in England, on a bed the other side, she started falling off. And my dad was like, not mine, no, nothing to do with me, this is my wife. And I was like, Dad, I'm going to go and help her. For me, my mind was more open to this kind of thing, not just living like the dogs, like, it's my place, and they feel really secure. No question, it's my job, I'm doing it, like that kind of thinking is to try to get as close as we can. I mean, the Buddha had gone to the ultimate extreme. So he had really given up everything, and the arahants, and gradually by degrees, they see actually this is the way to increasing happiness, to doing that. So there's a motivation to doing that, whereas otherwise people think the more cars I've got, the more houses I've got, I'm going to be less stressed. Well, try it and see what happens. Is this often completely opposite? It actually just doesn't work. It sounds like it should work. It looks like it should work. But ultimately, you can see from history, that it just doesn't actually work like that. The human happiness. So those are really good call-outs as well. But it's very counterintuitive. It's not following the flow, the usual, 2 children, car, job, safe. It's really questioning and trying alternative ways to peace than the usual mainstream thing. Please, there's a question here, please.
I'm loud enough. I don't need a mic.
No, please do, because it helps to record for the lady. And thank you.
Yeah. How do you actually prepare for death? For example, not just my own death, but for example, like maybe parents, like how do I prepare for my parents' death? Or even vice versa, how does a parent prepare the child for the parent's death?
Do you have children? Do you have children?
No, I don't have,
okay.
but I have a father. My mom passed away like 3 years ago, and I wasn't prepared for it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it was a shock.
Yeah.
And actually till today, I'm still grieving. And I guess it's normal to grieve. Yeah, but I wish my mom had prepared me for her death. Yeah. So I was just thinking about it because you brought the question. And
well, perfect. It's a perfect follow-on.
Yeah.
So one is, I'm very sorry to hear about your loss, first of all. And we can be sharing the merits with your mum. She's very recently passed. So it's in the in-between time when there isn't any death, it's really looking and reflecting and making it aware that this is always happening. It's always not denying it and pushing it to one way, so that when it comes, bam. Personally, with my mother, I spoke to her about 7 months before she died at length. And it was really the elephant in the room. Like I gave a talk on this subject, the elephant in the room, is because people just ignore it. And this is really calling out and having like direct conversations and trying to be as realistic as possible. That's the essence of real Buddhism, is to be as realistic as possible, and then really confronting it, not being afraid, and not being superstitious, and not being unwise about it, but it's being very frank and open, and having dialogue with yourself. It starts with yourself, and then also just looking at the way we're always dying all the time. That stops it being like this big whammy, that comes. It's like, well, it's always happening. We're always dying. We're always, and we're always being separated from the things that we love. So your other question about how, I think dialogue, just frank, open dialogue, often, and acknowledging it, that's so that is to say, like, do you realize, you are going to be gone? How would you like to be remembered? Is there anything I can do? It is like not just denying it and keeping it out of sight and burying ourselves in superficial things. I found it very odd to go to visit my grandma because all the old ladies, all they were talking about was the color of their hair, and they just did their rinse. And I'm like, you should be, like in Tibetan culture, very open, talking about death, and really being straight about it, not distracting and talking about like the football and the weather and other things, is being very direct and honest. Yeah, and those are some keys. And not living in a way which, you realize that it could happen any time. I had a brother who drowned he was fishing. And I was always like, be very careful. Karma's a real thing. If you're taking life, your life will probably be shortened. And sure enough, that happened. So we never had that conversation. He was saying, no, don't leave me alone. Don't lecture me. I'm going to go out with my beers, friends and have a beers and a barbecue. And, that he wasn't really, and he would often mock the way I'm living. And because he just thought it was something to make fun of. So this is something where this is a very sobering, very mature practice, but that is very much a part of it. The Maranasati is deliberately focusing. You can go and look at corpses. I mean, people are like, well, what would you do that for? No, but this is one of the things monks are very much encouraged to go look at a corpse. Look at an actual corpse or reflect on that, and then you can also think about their life. How were they living before? And how are we then living, in reflection? Because sometimes when the death comes, we think, wow, well, what was this all about? Or even when you get to aging, are you looking back on a meaningful life that you think, right, I'm glad about my choices? Or you're regretting sort of, oh no, God, I made a real mess of it. Are you proud? And have you done good deeds? And have you supported good karma? And it's the other thing is, it's very much a practice with offspring, is to try to extend who you consider to be yours. There's this thing of like your mind, then it becomes a very much more painful, like you're losing part of you. So there's this practice where someone had their arm blown off in one of the wars, and they put a mirror there, and then his other working arm, and then his brain saw two arms, and it went, and before then it was clinging. The brain was clinging to this painful arm for 10 years. He was in agony. So in a way, mindfulness is something like this: is that you are looking at others as brothers and sisters consciously. I was in the Philippines. They all call me, "Hey, brother Ben." My sister would be going, "Hey, I'm your sister." That's her mindset. Is very much us, kind of like a group. But the more that you're open and say, oh, uncle, we did it very deliberately, walk barefoot around the market. Uncle, auntie is really pushing against this sort of, I don't know you, sort of mentality. And that's also part of the practice. There's a multiple practices. Maranasati is just one of like 40 or so practices, but each one of them is to. There was one of the other talks I had about the Buddha. Someone said, "Oh, there's so much suffering in life," and the Buddha said, "Take a cup, fill it with water. Now put salt, a teaspoon of salt in. Take a drink." And it's like, he said, "Well, that's your life. Now put it in the lake." And now take a drink from the lake. And they said, yeah, that's okay. Something like this. That you really expand and open it more and more in any way you can. Like I'm thinking of going to Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, China. Not to indulge in there is part of this expanding. And also, it's easy to get in little patterns, little loops to feel comfortable and safe. No, you let go. And then go into the unknown. And then you're reducing your fear of the unknown and change. So those are some reflections. I hope they address your question somewhat. It's a deep practice. So I really recommend that all of these practices that we've talked about, and coming to more talks with different people. And there's another talk a little later on, about 1:00 or something, after the lunch, and that will go into some of these topics too. Yes. Yeah, I'm aware of your tension. I don't mind pushing it. Yeah, I'm good. Imaya dhammanu dhamma patipatiya buddhang pujemi sabada. Imaya dhammanu dhamma patipatiya dhammang puje misabada imaya dhammanu dhamma patipatiya sanghang puje misabada. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Buddhang namasami, Dhammang namasami, Sanghang namasami. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you all. Thank you so much. Great. Thank you very much. Very refreshing. Okay, let's go down and offer dana. We can share our merits also there.